Raise your fists together. I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop bullying. Save the children.
Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
We start this broadcast today remembering the life and the legacy of none other than Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He was assassinated April 4th, 54 years ago at 6:05 at the Lorraine Motel. Right there on that balcony, the blood of a prophet laid on the ground. But that same blood was the blood that inspired the entire world to continue the fight for justice. Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson was right there. He saw, he witnessed, he marched, and he worked alongside Dr. Martin Luther King. And so on today, 54 years later, we remember not only his death, but we are grateful for the resurrection of the movement in this day. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, for being a living sacrifice for us so that the world can be a better place. Not only do we remember Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King on today, but we remember Jan Camp's nephew, Stephen. He made his transition, but Jan, we are praying for you. You are truly a part of us here at Push, and the entire world today pauses to let you know that we love you and we are caring for your family. Betty Magnus, a true soldier, fighting the good fight, lost her son, Michael. Betty has been there for so many of us in the times of our loss. And so on today, Betty, we're here for you. We want you to know that we love you, that we care for you, and the entire family is in our prayers. Well, we got some news to celebrate today. None other than the work of Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson is seen on the football field. Tampa Bay has hired a black coach. That's right. Just about a few months ago that we witnessed the exclusion of so many black athletes and coaches on the field. But Reverend Jackson picked up the phone, organized, and here it is a few months later, Tampa Bay has hired a black coach. Not only that, the NFL has made a commitment to make it a mandate that the offensive team must have a black coach as well as a woman coach. And so again, the hard work and dedication is seen on the football field, but off the football field, none other than Don Thompson, a son of Rainbow Push, a partner in the movement, is now along with attorney Pat Holmes on the Diversity Council of the NFL. So again, we haven't lost a fight that we stood up and fought for. This last Sunday, we saw excellence on the big screen. But did you know that it was over 30 years ago that Reverend Jackson was picketing in front of the Academy to let it be known that not only do we want black filmmakers, we want black actors, partners, we want our fair share of equity and inclusion in Hollywood. Well, on last Sunday, Questlove won Best Documentary for a movement and a moment in history in Harlem. So we are grateful for not only their achievements, but lifetime achievements, Samuel Jackson's, and Will Packard, the first black producer of the Oscars. What a joy it was to witness black excellence. And again, it comes from the fight, because we ain't lost the fight that we stood up and fought. So those of you that are watching on today, we are grateful. Our partners at Impact Network, you can DVR. Did you know that? You can run back and listen and watch our broadcast. But again, thank you to our partners at the Impact Network. Those of you that are watching on Facebook and YouTube, share this with somebody. And last but not least, all roads lead to Chicago. We want new market. We want our space in different sectors. And so in June, save the date, Father's Day weekend, we want you here in Chicago, because we are going to gather the family together, and we're going to dive deep, work, partner, strategize for our fair share at our annual convention. Well, this is Reverend William Hall. I'm the pastor of St. James Community Church, son of Rainbow Push, and I want you to know that the push is on, because we definitely have some work to do.
Greetings, friends. This is Dr. Joseph Bryant Jr. I have the humble privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition, West Coast Silicon Valley, and the National Sports Director for the Rainbow Push Coalition under the leadership of the amazing Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. It is good to see all of you, and we are so excited about all of the magnificent things that we have the privilege of serving in under Reverend Jackson's leadership and vision. We continue to serve our community even as we are coming out of the pandemic. We are blessed to be able to provide meals to over 250 families per week. We are able to provide hot meals as well as groceries, produce, proteins, dairy products to a lot of needy families on a regular basis through our food justice program. So we're very grateful for that. Also, coming out of this past month of Black History, we were grateful to partner with former NBA player Etan Thomas and be a part of a virtual HBCU sports athlete tour that covered Morehouse, Howard, Clark University, and we were able to support that effort as the students were taught to utilize their platform beyond the playing field to ensure that they could have impact, not just in the game, but beyond the game. And so we're grateful for that type of privilege. We also, coming into this month, Women's Month, we're honored to be a part of a celebration with Congresswoman Barbara Lee, as well as the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, where we were able to receive the brand new quarter featuring Maya Angelou. What a joy to be a part of that event. And so we're grateful for the invitation from Congresswoman Lee and to be a part of that great celebration in San Francisco. And this weekend, we are actually in New Orleans as we are celebrating with the NCAA their not only basketball tournament, the Final Four, but we are also participating in their social justice activities. We are a part of the HBCU launch. They're having their first annual HBCU All-Star Game. And in light of that, they are also having several conversations. I thank our partner, HBCU Heroes, Tracy Pennywell and George Lynch, who have invited us to partner with them throughout the year and be a part of this weekend's activities, which include a speaking opportunity to share with students at Dillard University, be a part of the business of sports, as well as voting and other preparations that we have been able to provide student athletes to look towards their future and their responsibility to be positive adults, even as they play sports. There's so much more they have to offer, in addition to the fact that we're just grateful for what the NCAA is attempting to do, embracing much more diversity and including HBCUs significantly. All these things are a part of what Reverend Jackson has always called us to be a part of. And in light of that, we're excited that on the horizon, just a few weeks away, we want you to save the date, May 18th and 19th, Push Tech 2022. We are moving forward another year, our 7th annual Push Tech Conference, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And we'll be looking at the power of technology on the heels of the pandemic. We are looking at all of the amazing progress that has been made in technology, all the things that have happened with the metaverse, with virtual reality, augmented reality. We're going to have conversations around Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and we're going to learn more and more about NFTs and NILs and the name, image, and likeness availability now for student athletes as well as professional athletes. All these wonderful things that are happening through technology, through the digital world, and we're excited to be able to partner of going forward with so many wonderful companies. Therefore, we ask that you register for the conference coming up May 18th and 19th. We look forward to seeing you then. We look forward to seeing you there. It will be virtual, so wherever you are, you can join us to keep hope alive. God bless you. Peace.
Good day. My name is James Gomez. I'm the International Affairs Director for Rainbow Push Coalition. War is always unfortunate and tragic, whether it is in Africa, the Middle East, Asia, or as we currently witness between Russia and Ukraine. As Reverend Jackson always says, we always pray for peace and pray for peaceful negotiation to bring all conflict to a peaceful end. We met yesterday with the Ukrainian Consul General and discussed ways we can support the efforts to support the refugees that are fleeing the conflicts. And they will be sending us details in terms of how we can assist, which will be available on our website, www.rainbowpush.org. And I hope that you guys can work with us in terms of supporting these needy people. As we support these Ukrainians, let us not also forget the plight of refugees and also people fleeing conflict in Africa, in Asia, the Middle East, and other parts of the world. As Reverend always say, we must always measure human rights with one yardstick, and that should also apply to how we assist people from all kinds of conflicts across the globe, regardless of their nationality and their background. So we hope that you will continue to join us as we pray for peace and also as we pray for hope, reconciliation, and love. And as Reverend Jackson's always say, let's study war no more and continue to preach for peace. Keep hope alive.
Attention college students, if you are in need of financial assistance, Push for Excellence can help. The Oralee Sanders Scholarship is a $2,500 award available to students of all majors with a minimum 2.5 GPA. For high school seniors, we offer the $5,000 Cyrilla McSween Scholarship and the $2,500 Airmark Trade Scholarship. Deadline to apply is April 15th. For more information, visit pushexcel.org.
Good morning, Push family. It's always good to be with you. I am Cameron Barnes, the National Youth Director at Rainbow Push. And this week we were very excited to host students from the North Park University at our Rainbow Push headquarters. These students were able to see the headquarters for themselves. We took a tour of the building. Reverend Jackson was able to address the students and have a little bit of a Q&A. And we watched a video that shows the evolution of Rainbow Push from what it started to be and as to what we are today. We'd love for our students to come to Rainbow Push.
I don't believe that now in today's day and age that a lot of people my age have had experiences like this. So to see something like this and to understand that people actually want to see the youth, push forward what has been or what could be is something that I think a lot of people my age need to see. And it has been captivating to see something like that, and especially in a space like this with the people that we're with.
I loved it. I loved every single second of it, especially meeting Reverend Jackson. I didn't know that was going to happen, and to be honest, I didn't know who he was before coming here, so that was very surprising finding out, but also very, very interesting. And I'm so happy that I got the chance to be here today and learned, especially since as an international student from Sweden, I don't feel like a lot of international students would get this opportunity or this chance to come here and learn about history. And I feel like it's so important to know about history and what happened in the past and how we can make it better now and also in the future for future generations. So I am so happy that I got to be here today.
For me, as a Black woman, and just being in a space where you see people like you and have the same passions as you in different sectors, it's like really just a breath of fresh air for me. Just coming together to just have an understanding, to understand the past, to make a better future and understand the present as well. It's very encouraging, it's very inspiring, and I'm ready to do the work.
we intend to host even more colleges, even more universities, even more bodies of students here at Rainbow Push Coalition. We certainly want you to join the organization. There's a student movement that you must be a part of. If you go to www.rainbowpush.org, you can take out a membership. As a student, it's only $15 a year, and we certainly want you and your delegation to come to Rainbow Push. We look forward to hosting you very soon. We also look forward to hosting you at our international conference. There is a place for students in our conference. Our conference will take place June the 18th through the 22nd right here in Chicago. And if you want to be a part of that, if you have an idea, an issue, something that is affecting students, I want you to meet me here Monday nights. Monday nights, we are here planning for the convention. Students, we need you to be a part of that. Go to our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter pages, and you can find more updates about how you can join us.
Push Excel's goal is to inspire students to strive for excellence in education in spite of personal, family, and community challenges that they might experience. How do we do this? By advocating for educational policies that guarantee equal funding for all students without regard to race or economic standing. By engaging parents, students, and teachers in pursuing high-quality education and striving for educational excellence at every level. And by forging partnerships with community-based and public sector stakeholders in education. Now, Push Excel is a national model program with the purpose of connecting principals, parents, popular personalities, and students in a bond and to support students at every level on the educational ladder. Now, we want you to become a member of the Rainbow Push Coalition and Push Excel. Your annual membership can help us to change policies that impact students, colleges, and universities all around the country. So step up and sign up today. Membership is only $35, and if you're a student or a senior, $15. Just go to our website, rainbowpush.org, and push join to become a member or push donate to support the Push Excel program. You can also text the word Push Excel, that's PUSHEXCEL, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give us any amount that you feel comfortable giving or call us at 773-256-2775. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you. And remember to keep hope alive.
Hi, I'm Tim Lee, and I'm honored to be one of the coaches of the Push Excel Oratorical Society. And today, many of our members want to join in a special tribute for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in celebrating his life, his legacy, and his last words. On April the 3rd, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, Dr. King gave his last public address. Please give your attention to our young orators as they interpret these powerful and prophetic words.
And so just as I say, we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around. We aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't really matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop.
Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place.
But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to just go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land.
I might not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
This Saturday, we are celebrating what would have been the birthday of Cesar Chavez, a man who led the farm workers' issues all around America. He led the fight for those people who work in the fields each and every day without a livable wage, without even a minimum wage. And so we celebrate the life of Cesar Chavez, who was so committed to the farm workers that he started a hunger strike. As his body was breaking down, Reverend Jackson joined him and led other faith leaders to join the hunger strike with Cesar Chavez, that he might live and work with the farm workers. And so we thank you, Reverend Jackson, again for how you are constantly always moving and supporting the move for change. And we celebrate with our Latino brothers and sisters as they remember Cesar Chavez, as we reflect on the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As we talk about Dr. King and what his legacy means, join me as I engage in a conversation with the daughter of Rabbi Joshua Heschel, Rabbi Susanna Heschel, who will talk about how she grew up knowing Dr. King and watching her father work with Dr. King. It's a great conversation. You don't want to miss this. I want to introduce to all of you, to each of you who are watching us this morning, a very special guest, Rabbi Susanna Heschel. And she is a professor at Dartmouth University. It's interesting, she's the daughter of Rabbi Joshua Heschel, but she is a scholar, a theologian in her own right. And so on behalf of Reverend Jackson and the entire Rainbow Push family, we welcome you to our Saturday morning community forum where we present the issues, discuss the public policies that face people all over the world. And so I am just honored to be with you this morning and that you adjusted your schedule to share some thoughts with us. And I guess most people don't know the relationship between Rabbi Heschel and Dr. King and what it meant, how they met. We're not familiar with the inside story, so I hope that you will be able to share with us some of your reflections and some of the knowledge you gained.
No, I just wanted to first say it's good to be with you, Reverend Wilson, and I also want to say how much Reverend Jesse Jackson has meant to me in my life. He was a good friend of my father's. I met him when I was just a teenager for the first time, and I just saw him actually earlier this month in Selma. He was there together with his son Jonathan, and his son Jesse and I are friends on Facebook. Reverend Jackson has always been so tremendously kind to me. He is a wonderful human being, and he has done great things and continues to in his life. My father first met Dr. King in 1963 in Chicago. There was a conference that was organized by the National Conference of Christians and Jews in January of 63, and my father and Dr. King were both asked to come and give keynote lectures. So that's where they met. And somehow they bonded right away. And there's a lesson because my father was a refugee from Hitler's Europe. He came... Oh, wow. Yeah, he was born in Warsaw, he studied in Berlin, and he got out at the very last minute. He came here in March of 1940, and his mother and three of his sisters were murdered by the Nazis, his whole family. So he came with nothing, and he struggled. But he came from a very religious Jewish family. And Dr. King, as we know, Dr. King had a different experience growing up, but also he experienced the racism of this country as my father experienced the anti-Semitism of Nazi Germany. And I think it's remarkable that they felt suddenly very close to each other when they first met. I think they bonded over the Bible and the prophets, their love of the Bible, and the way they thought about the Bible, and the way they thought about prayer, and the importance of the prophets and the prophetic tradition. For Dr. King, this was the way Christianity should be. And for my father, this was the way Judaism should be. That is, rooted in the Exodus, in the prophets, religion as liberation from oppression.
I think it's really interesting that you talk about the prophetic tradition of both men and really the analysis of the prophets. Somehow, Dr. King's last message, I've been to the mountaintop. I've been told by other rabbis that, that whole mountaintop experience and in the prophetic tradition, particularly as we look at Moses, and oftentimes Dr. King was referred to as our Moses, leading us out of the Jim Crow, moving us from the segregation that was really heavy in the South, but also in the North. And so could you talk a little bit, because I know you've written tons of articles and studied this whole prophetic tradition of both men, your father and Dr. King, as we look at, the legacy of Dr. King and in many ways the legacy of Rabbi Heschel.
My father was a student at the University of Berlin in 1927, and he came from a very religious background, and he felt that the people who were the professors and the scholars at the universities, who were famous professors writing about the Bible, had no idea what they were talking about and actually were mocking the Bible in their writings and not being attentive to the message of the prophets. So what's the message? My father said the message of the prophets is, first of all, a tremendous passion for the suffering of human beings. He said that the opposite of good is not evil. The opposite of good is indifference. And the prophets are the people who are the opposite of indifference. He said people call the prophets hysterical because of their passionate denunciation of wickedness. And yet, if we call the prophets hysterical, what should we say about the people who are indifferent? Why do we mock people who are passionate about overcoming oppression? Why do we make fun of them? And what are the scholars trying to accomplish, actually? The prophets are trying to teach us also that God cares about us, that God is with us in our suffering, that God is affected by how we treat other human beings. And that's the message of the prophets. And yes, the other remarkable thing about the Bible is that the Bible comes to the world and gives us a message that one day there will be peace. One day. That's an amazing dream that never occurred to anybody else in the world. And that's also something that is the prophetic message. The prophets too went to the mountaintop and they saw that one day there will be peace. They didn't get there with us, as Dr. King said, but we hold on to that dream of peace, and that's our goal.
Well, I remember, and I really thank you for that analysis. I remember reading, there was a book about, there was a printed copy of the conference that your father and Dr. King attended in Chicago.
Oh.
And both of them presented those papers. And I was wondering, as I look at the mountaintop speech, the last sermon that Dr. King gave, and where we are today, how do you see his prophetic message that night at Mason Temple as we look at the war in Ukraine, the bombing by Russia, as we look at the rise of public displays of racism, anti-Semitism, hatred of every person that hate anti-Asian moves, anti other religions, other cultures. It seems to permeate this nation and even around the world. How do you see Dr. King's messages in light of where we are today? Because I do believe there's hope, but it's some of the challenges that we see.
Of course, we face the challenges and they continue. And I would say Dr. King gave a speech, one of his speeches, in which he said, Bull Connors turns on the fire hoses. And I think it's important for people to understand what that meant. That is, fire hoses were terrible weapons. They were so fierce, they could tear the hair out of your head. These were turned on against
Children.
Innocent men, women, and children. King said in his speech that Bull Connors has to realize that there's, like the burning bush, there are some fires that cannot be extinguished. And that's the fire of human spirit, the fire of hope. It's the prophetic fire. It's the burning bush. And so, yes, the war in Ukraine shows us is the horror of lies, of mendacity at the highest level, the cruelty, the horror, the destruction, the evil, the wickedness. What can we do to preserve our human spirit and make sure that that fire doesn't go out? That's the obligation right now.
I look at the work of Dr. King's, all of his messages. How do you think he helped us to have hope? And how do you think that he helped to shape us for a future that he did not realize? Reverend Jackson often says that Dr. King never met an African-American mayor of Atlanta, of Alabama, or any of the southern states that he visited. He never met a U.S. senator from Georgia. He imagined, he must believe that we would have elected an African-American president, but he was not alive to see it. And so I know in the Jewish tradition, there is something about mountains in the Hebrew language. And so maybe if you could share, because that mountaintop speech, it was delivered, you remember, in the midst of a storm. Dr. King was not feeling well. He was not well celebrated in a mass sense. As we look at the context of that year, it was perhaps the most difficult year of his life because there were pressures everywhere. So could you kind of talk a little bit about that?
That what year was a nightmare. So Dr. King spoke out against the war in Vietnam on April 4th, 1967 at Riverside Church in New York. And I was there that night. My father introduced him that evening. And he was immediately attacked in the newspapers, Dr. King, for speaking out against the war, including by fellow civil rights leaders. I think he was deeply hurt by that. But I think we have to also recognize, first of all, what tremendous courage Dr. King had. Amazing courage. That he always kept the faith, that he knew what he was doing. Ambassador Andrew Young said many times that before the civil rights leaders did anything in public, they figured out a strategy. They figured out a strategy politically, legally, in all kinds of ways. If they were going to go to prison, who was going to be there for them? Who was going to be the lawyer, for example? How effective would this be? They were thinking in strategic terms, long term. And I admire that. My father said, Dr. King, by the way, came to speak at a conference honoring my father just 10 days before he was assassinated. It was a gathering of rabbis in New York in the Catskill Mountains. And when Dr. King came into the room, all of us stood up and we linked arms like this, and we sang, "We Shall Overcome" in Hebrew. And Dr. King said, I've been all over the world and I've heard "We Shall Overcome" in every language, but this is the first time in Hebrew. And my father introduced him that evening and said, Dr. King is a sign that God has not forsaken the United States of America. Dr. King came as a gift from God. He inspired us. He renewed our souls. And I'm saying that for all people, that is for Jews too. 6 million Jews had just been killed. Dr. King came to heal our souls, to inspire us, to make us feel that we had something to live for. And that's why Jews got involved in the civil rights movement. Dr. King gave us hope. And that's what the Bible does to us. That's what it is to go to church, to go to synagogue, go to mosque, to go to pray. We find, in a sense, our home. We find our soul. We have intimacy with God, and with ourselves, with the community. And it renews our sense of purpose and hope. And Dr. King gave that to us. And can I also just say that it's very, sometimes, excuse me, You know, nonviolence didn't just mean if somebody hits you, you don't hit back. Nonviolence was more than that. Nonviolent training was months and months of preparation, of thinking, of talking, of experiencing, of discussing, to become a different kind of human being, to become a prophetic human being. And I tell you, the people I meet from the civil rights movement, to this day, 60 years later, they greet me with so much warmth, with a hug and a kiss and a thank you, because they're grateful, they tell me, for my father. And I have to say, what does it mean for somebody 60 years later, with all that's happened and all the terrible things that are bursting in the United States, all of this white supremacy, even in the White House we had one, and yet the gratitude, to express gratitude after 60 years, I think that's extraordinary. And that tells us also something about what nonviolence means. Being a different kind of person, a person who knows how to express gratitude, to feel it from their heart. Those are the kinds of people we want in this country and around the world. That's the goal.
I am so grateful that you took the time to share with us this morning. That's just such a powerful analysis of two men, two giants who stood in the prophetic tradition. And as I think about this anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King, 1968, April 4th, 1968, and here we are, April 4th, coming up on this coming Monday, 2022. Yes. And in many ways, we're fighting a similar fight, but there have been some, as you say, we've won some big victories. You know, every time we step forward, things change. What would be your closing thoughts or your closing reflections for today that you want to share with our audience as we remember April 4th and the brutal murder of Dr. King and where we are today?
It was such a devastating moment in human history. That Dr. King was assassinated felt like a bullet in our hearts. He meant so much to us. We had the privilege of being inspired by his presence in our world. And I think he still remains a vivid presence of inspiration and of hope. And I think we should all follow his legacy and strive to be the kind of human being that he was. He lived a life that was not easy, not at all. But he gave us a tremendous gift. And I do believe, as my father said, that he was a gift from God. And a gift from God is something we should treasure forever.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this brief conversation and reflection on Dr. King. We have one more for you this coming Monday at noon. You should join us at the Rainbow Push headquarters if you're in Chicago. We're going to go deep into the life and legacy, reflecting on several of Dr. King's speeches. We have Dr. Myron McCoy, who will be joining us. Rabbi Sam Gordon will be joining us, and a representative from the Proctor Institute. All of them will be talking about what did Dr. King's life mean? What does it mean to us today in the prophetic tradition of Amos, Micah, and and Isaiah, so many other prophets. You don't want to miss it. See you at Push, 12 o'clock, Monday, April 4th.
After the march, when that broke out in violence, we all went to Memphis for two reasons: to support the sanitation workers' march, so it would be nonviolent, but also to continue our discussion of the Poor People's Campaign. That night, there was a mass meeting at Mason Temple Church, and Martin Luther King was scheduled to go and speak, but it was pouring down raining.
Dr. King is sitting in the room most of the day. He said, "I have a headache, I don't feel like going." But Jess said, "Will you go?" So we went over there and we walked in the door. Church was about 3/4 full and people cheering. You could sense they were expecting him.
Martin Luther King is already in his pajamas in bed. And we were working on a press statement for Washington, D.C.
We went down the side of the church and called him on the pay telephone. Said, Martin, come just for a few minutes. You don't have to stay long. Say they're so ready for you.
I could only hear one side of the call, but Martin Luther King said, now, are you telling me that you want me to get up out of my bed and take off my pajamas and get dressed and come out in the pouring down rain, okay, to speak at this meeting? So obviously the answer on the other side said yes.
The Moses of 1968, Martin Luther King.
Martin came to that church thinking that he was just going to make remarks and not to give the major speech. But he got up and he gave that speech as though he knew that the end was near.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
The next morning, we were working on the press statement for the Poor People's Campaign. Martin Luther King said to me, now, Bernard, the next project we're going to work on is to institutionalize and internationalize nonviolence.
I was on the witness stand most of that day. We got permission to march, and I came back to the Lorraine Motel. He was childish and giddy and cussed me out. You know, where you been? He threw a pillow at me. I threw it back. But everybody else picked up pillows, and it was like a bunch of 10-year-olds. And just about that time, Billy Kyles knocked on the door and said, you all will do it at my house by 6 o'clock. My wife's got dinner waiting. And so he jumped up and went upstairs to put on a shirt and tie. I was coming across the courtyard, and from the balcony, Dr. King said, Jesse, you don't even have on a tie. So I said, Dr. King, a prerequisite for eating is appetite. He said, you're crazy. We laughed. He was just extremely relaxed and comfortable and playful. It was the happiest I had seen him in a long time. We've been laughing and playing, and he stop! And he raised up, the bullet hit him right here. It severed his tie. I got up and went running toward him, but he was non-responsive. So I got up and went and called Mrs. King. It's a long 10 steps to take from where he was to that phone. I said, Miss King, I said, Dr. King been shot. I think he's been shot in the shoulder. I think you should come. I really couldn't say what I saw. It was like too much to say. It's like, I couldn't say that. Couldn't say that.
On Monday, the world will pause to remember the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. 54 years ago. The pain and horror that followed the violent killing of the ambassador of nonviolent social change sent shockwaves across the country. Debate over the effectiveness of methods of nonviolent resistance reached a nadir after Dr. King's assassination, with many cities erupting in public grief. It was on the heels of Dr. King's death that the Kerner Commission released its report that studied the causes of urban unrest, particularly in light of the passage of significant pieces of legislation intended to advance racial justice and reduce social inequality. including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Economic Opportunity Act that created the Job Corps and Project Head Start, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the Elementary and Secondary Education Act passed in that same year, and the passage of the Fair Housing Act in 1968, which was being debated at the time of Dr. King's assassination and was passed shortly after his death. The Kerner Report spoke to then and reminds us now that the issue of race and racism has devastating consequences for all of us. The three great evils that Dr. King fought against, poverty, racism, and war, are as prevalent now as then. The racial hostility and indifference demonstrated in the deaths at the hands of police and quasi-police, such as in the deaths of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, Tamir Rice, Amir Locke, Dante Wright, and Malcolm James, is all too prevalent in the post-January 6th America. The harm of embedded, persistent poverty denies human dignity, while excessive, expansive, and expensive militarism threatens to annihilate the planet. The circumstances of our times call each of us to rise to this moment and not only remember Dr. King, but to emulate Dr. King's commitment to fighting the three great evils, poverty, racism, and war. We must remember to keep yearning, keep pressing, keep marching until we as a people get to the promised land of universal hope, human dignity, and true justice. We remember Dr. King's life and we honor his sacrifice by giving ourselves anew to the cause and the call of justice. Now let us all keep hope alive.
The push is on now, and every week I want to say, first of all, where would we be if Reverend Jackson didn't make a little room for us young people? And so I want to thank Reverend Jackson again and kind of give you a heads up in just these few moments about what we're going to talk about in the Push Now moment every single week this month in April. First thing first, we're going to deal with policy. Policy is what's causing pain. Our guest this month will unpack different bills on a local level as well as a federal level that will impact and shape the next 50 years. And so this entire month, we're going to deal with policy. Now, politics can get a little complicated, but in the same spirit of the 84 and 1988 campaign that birthed out of Reverend Jackson, we're going to make politics easy and palatable for you to understand, especially as we look at, again, the next 50 years. So we're going to unpack student loan debt. Now, we heard President Biden mention the idea of forgiveness, but yet we haven't seen any loans forgiven. We've seen payments delayed, but we've been denied freedom from student loan debt. And then last but not least, when we talk about especially diversity, equity, and inclusion, you can have two of the same thing and still be considered diverse. So again, you all, the push is on now. The next 2 weeks, we're going to unpack policy. We're going to look strategically at what policies are impacting us now and again later. Ashley Munson will be our guest for 2 weeks. We're going to look at some things from a different lens. And then lastly, we're going to end the month with our friends from JP Morgan as we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, not from the lens of what's in it for us, but why aren't we at the table? Because again, this convention this year is about new space, new market. Where are we? And so again, you all, tell somebody, text somebody, tweet somebody. Those of you that are watching on the Impact Network, DVR, because the push is on now.
Welcome to this week's Due Process. I'm Todd Yeary. We begin with an update on the efforts to dissuade the Tennessee Comptroller from effectively taking over the administrative function of the town of Mason, a mostly black community of almost 1,400 residents. Last week, I shared with you the effort that Comptroller Jason Mumpower was employing to convince the residents to surrender the town's charter to the state or face being taken over by the Comptroller's office. This week, Rainbow Push Coalition and other national civil rights organizations wrote to Tennessee officials to express concern and outrage concerning the attempts to deny the local officials the opportunity to resolve concerns that were created 2 decades prior to the current administration's election. After a number of conversations with Mason's leaders, a letter was sent to Governor Bill Lee and Comptroller Mumpower requesting that the state halt any efforts to take over Mason's administrative functions, as well as relieving the town of the remaining debt in light of the significant monies Tennessee has received from the federal government under the American Rescue Plan Act. In the letter, we requested a meeting with the governor and the comptroller to help protect the integrity of the expressed will of the residents of Mason and their local government, and to assist the town in preparing for the substantial growth expected to come to the area with the construction of a Ford Motor Company electric vehicle plant. As we await a response from the governor and comptroller, Rainbow Push will continue to support the efforts of the mayor, vice mayor, town council, and the residents of Mason to retain their charter and continue to recover from the pandemic and thrive as the region experiences new growth and investment. On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is expected to take up the vote for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's Supreme Court nomination to move to floor debate. It is expected that committee Republicans will not vote to move the nomination to the floor, creating another procedural hurdle before the full Senate confirms her nomination. Even with the anticipated delay, it is expected that Judge Jackson will be confirmed prior to the Senate's Easter recess, as many have been counting the number of votes in support of Judge Jackson's confirmation. 2 senators, who are often viewed as critical to passing legislation in the evenly divided Senate, Senator Susan Collins and Senator Joe Manchin, have both indicated that they will vote to confirm Judge Jackson when the nomination reaches the floor. The announcement all but assures that Jackson will be confirmed without the need to have Vice President Kamala Harris break a tie vote in the Senate. While many have hoped for some Republican support for Judge Jackson's nomination, political pragmatists have argued that it really doesn't matter whether or not the confirmation vote has Republican support. The nation is ready and the world is watching, as history will be made in just a few more days when Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson will be confirmed and take the oath as the 116th Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. 2 weeks ago, the U.S. Census Bureau issued its report on the 2020 census results. In assessing the accuracy of the population count taken every 10 years, the report indicated significant undercounting in communities of color. While the report generally indicated that the undercount was statistically insignificant nationally, when looking at the undercount in communities of color, the potential impact on federal appropriation and legislative redistricting could be significant. Some of the key indicators from the report indicate that Black or African American individuals were undercounted by 3.3%, while Hispanic or Latinx people were undercounted at a rate of 4.99%. American Indian or Alaska Native populations were undercounted at a rate of 5.64%. While the report indicates that the undercounts were statistically insignificant from prior census cycles, the trend of consistent undercounting is cause for great concern. When considering how census data is used to inform policy matters, determine political voting power, and to address disparities in social outcomes, census undercounting in communities of color further reinforces the disparate impact of public policy. For example, children between the ages of birth and 4 years old were undercounted by almost 3%, while males between the ages of 18 and 29 years old were undercounted by 2.25%. The persistent pattern of undercounting is cause for alarm and may require court remedies to address the adverse consequences of poor census execution. Certainly, the tug of war between the Trump administration and the Congress during the census counting period was only the beginning of the fight to ensure that the process of governing works for all people, not only those who count. Finally, we honor history that was made this week as President Biden signed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act into law. The law makes lynching a federal hate crime. Named in memory of Emmett Till, the Chicago native who was brutally murdered by a group of white men in Mississippi in 1955 for allegedly whistling at a white woman. It was Mamie Till's boldness that forced the nation to confront racial mob violence as she insisted upon an open casket at young Emmett's funeral. The memories of Emmett Till's killing, and many others that were often recorded in photos used as pictorial keepsakes by Sunday churchgoers attending the afternoon repast at a public execution, makes the arrival of this day more than historic. The first anti-lynching bill was introduced in 1918 by Congressman Leonidas Dyer from Missouri. The white Republican, who represented a mostly black district, was incensed by the racial violence in St. Louis and across the South. The bill finally passed the House of Representatives in 1922 and made it to the Senate floor that same year, when it failed to pass due to a filibuster by Southern Democrats. Over the decades, different versions of an anti-lynching bill have been introduced with no success. That is, until this week. After seeing the bill stymied at the end of the last Congress by Senator Rand Paul, the bill finally received overwhelming approval by unanimous consent in the Senate and all but 3 Congresspeople approving the bill in the House. We applaud the action of the Congress and the ratification by the President in finally making racial mob violence a federal hate crime. Now, time to address voting rights and police reform. The work continues. That is this week's Due Process. I'm Todd Yeary.
We're excited to get more people involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. If you're interested in impacting public policies, if you believe in the scholarships that we give to thousands of students each and every year, you can become a policymaker by becoming a member of Rainbow Push right now. For an annual membership of $35, or if you're a student or senior, $15, you can help us make a difference in the lives of millions. How do you become a member? Visit our website at rainbowpush.org and press join. Or maybe you'd like to support us. You can text the word PUSH, that's PUSH, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give any amount you feel comfortable giving. You can also call us at 773-256-2775, or go to rainbowpush.org and push donate. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you.